I would say in the past, I would react, and I would be like, kind of mad and, frustrated. And I think I was a big asshole when we started Rebel, and, I rubbed people the wrong way. I must have rubbed them the right way also, because people stuck with me.
As a founder, when you're just getting started, impatience is a given. It comes from a mix of youth, ambition, and a desire to prove others wrong. Which is why, as Jaydeep Barman of Rebel Foods, who you just heard, recollects from his personal experience.
I would not take setbacks and failures lightly, and I would be like really edgy and things like that.
But as your startup gets older, as you get older, you learn to ease back from the front lines of daily battles and crises into your true role as a leader.
I think over time I have learned to take a long view of things.
Because once you're past two things, the race against time to ensure that your business will survive, and the race against your own mind to prove that you're good enough, you change. You come to the understanding that you live to see another day, and that what hasn't killed you has indeed made you stronger. You start to reflect and see you weren't doing all that bad. Reflection for most founders is a hard pill to swallow because it can't kick in early by design. You need the passage of time. You have to wait it out, all the while the people around you suffer and live through you being terrible to them during that phase. But once that's over, you're grateful to those very people for sticking around despite your brashness and unreasonableness. The perspective you gain after that is immensely valuable, not just to you, but for your organization too.
Maybe after a few of these knocks, I realized that, you know, in the long run, it will not matter. I think I'm more at peace nowadays with respect to where I was.
I usually like to lead with reflections when starting off the second half of our conversations at First Principles. This one too is filled with recollections, but a bit more personal and self reflective. This self reflection showed through the entirety of my 2 hour long conversation with Jaydeep, part 1 of which we released on 25th April. In fact, I'd urge you to listen to that first part if you haven't already, and then return to this second part to really understand what I mean. But if you're already done with it, then welcome to First Principles. I'm your host, Rohin Dharmakumar, and this is part 2 of my conversation with Jaydeep Barman. Let's get started. Hi, are you a premium subscriber to the Ken? If you're not, I'm not here to pressure you. Take all the time in the world. But if you are a premium subscriber, I really hope you updated your subscriber app. We released a completely revamped version that was, you're not going to believe this, nearly 6 months in the making. Our older app was, if I'm being honest, a little long in the tooth. I'd stopped using it myself, preferring to read stories via the Ken's website instead. But our all-new 2024 apps are going to blow your mind, trust me. Sure, they look fantastic, but they're also stuffed to the gills with new features. In-app subscriptions, premium fonts, bookmarks, community comments, and an all-new action bar at the bottom that shows reading progress, sharing options, and personalization options. And if you own an iPad, we have released a completely native iPad app too, one designed to take advantage of the larger screen size and not simply resize the desktop or mobile website. So go on, head over to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store to download or update to our latest apps. Links to them are in the show notes. You can now also download and sign up and subscribe right from the app, which means you can also download our new apps even if you aren't a subscriber yet. Thanks for listening. Switching back to my conversation with Jaydeep Barman now. What part of your job do you wish you didn't have to do?
Mm, I think um, I think running a brick and mortar business in India, especially restaurants, comes with a lot of regulatory and I'm sure there are industries which are even more regulated. But like for example, every kitchen of us requires 5 licenses, um, and you never know when you're on the wrong side of the law because it's so sort of fuzzy and vague and things like that. Um, and now there are talks of us becoming a public company. I think this will go to another level.
That's
But this
very
is
interesting phrasing. Let's leave it at that.
yeah, and that's that part of the job um, I have struggled with. But over time, I think we've got the right people to take care of that. Um, but there are many other things that the procedural things. Let's say, have never been my forte, and I never looked forward to those things.
Now, the question I didn't ask you is, what's the skill set complementary match between you and Kalol?
Hmm.
What does, like, how did the two of you fit together? I mean, it's very interesting, right? The two of you studied together, then decided to start Faasos together, and then left it to do your MBAs together, and then came back after your MBAs and different jobs to do Rebel Foods, and you're still together. So obviously there is a significant amount of, I think, complementarianism, if I were to kind of use that, going on, right? What is it? What's the equation between the two of you? What is he and what are you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I will quote Kallol on this.
Hmm.
So, according to him, he told this to one of our investors, in fact, that Jaydeep takes care of business as usual, and I take care of anything that comes in the way of business as usual.
Interesting.
So, I think our partnership, I have had horror stories. I have heard horror stories about, two people not being able to continue for a long time, but we go a really long way. So, there is a personal chemistry that is there. But I think Kallol has a very clear mind because he's unburdened with the business as usual responsibilities of Rebel. So, for example, if you have, when we open a new country, for example, figuring that thing out, how some of the laws of the land should be catered to, or some, like the Indonesia business we have to get out of. And that is not easy, because I realize that getting out is tougher than getting in. That is not business as usual. That is not, impacting us. So he would pick that up, finish it. If you look at his LinkedIn profile, exactly, he says special assignments at Rebel Food. Sometimes it feels like he's an assassin or something. But
I was about to actually, while even before you said special operations, I said the picture that you're painting of him is like that, typically that a tiger team that goes in
yeah,
to achieve
Marine,
an
yeah,
operation, like
yeah,
it's a set of commandos with a specific set
yeah,
of skills, and then they come back once the operation is done.
yeah, yeah. So he does every year. There are like a couple of projects like this he does. So that's one. Secondly, he has been a calming influence on Rebel, especially in the years when I was like really, really not a great boss, I would say.
Was that around the 2014 time frame when it was
Around
stressful? Yeah.
mostly between 2010, 2011 and 2015, 16. He had a calming influence. People would go to him and and talk to him and things. So these are things he, and plus the other piece is when I'm thinking about something, he's a great bouncing board because he has a very clear mind. He's not technically I'm not his boss. He can speak his mind out. He has a clear thinking, has rebel, um, as his first priority. So great, sort of bouncing board for ideas. From
I
day
didn't
one.
ask you, why is it called Rebel Foods?
Well, I think, it was a name given by one of our investors. So around 2016-17, we had Faasos, and then Beirut came about around 2017, and a bunch of brands. So we are thinking, okay, we can't call ourselves Faasos anymore as a company. We should come up with a different name. And then I remember in one of the meetings where there were a couple of investors in the room, and someone from Lightbox, in fact, he said, okay, you guys are doing things that have never been done before. You are like, always
Do
trying
things differently.
do things differently, not mainstream. Why don't you call yourself Rebel Foods? And unanimously we say, that's amazing. So, that's how it came about. Yeah.
All right. What phrases, do you have any pet phrases that you're known for at work, where in meetings, in discussions, etc., you end up saying things frequently?
Well, I think the team can say this
All right.
better than me. Yeah.
In review meetings, what's the one line that your teams dread hearing from you?
Not raising the bar. Because there have been times where I realized that, everything is hunky-dory, everything is good, but the bar hasn't been raised. So people are not thinking the next level and not challenging the status quo, just being comfortable. And that's always my, if I see consecutive 2 months of great contact data and great CX data and, gradually increasing sales, and I'm thinking that maybe we're not, raising the bar and not, pushing ourselves to the next level. And because we do the written format of review, that people have to write the whole thing, so people put a lot of work behind, writing that out, a lot of thinking, etc., etc. And there have been cases where I said that this is not raising the bar. This is being comfortable, and I think that would be the one.
I want to ask you about long form communication for meetings. Specifically, how do you ensure that when someone puts in a lot of hard work into writing a long form piece about a project that they're planning, or like some initiative that they're planning, and if it's being sent out to a group, how do you ensure that the group actually reads it and values it, and it doesn't end up becoming a scenario where the person who wrote the long form feels that, look, I wrote it, but I don't think anyone took it seriously enough?
Yeah, see, I used to work at McKinsey where there was a saying that, we were changing the world one PowerPoint slide at a time. So it's like that hardcore. But the one thing I realized, that the problem with PowerPoints is that its biggest use is to make the presenter look good. And as a result, all the charts on PowerPoints are, upward sloping towards the right. And, you just bring in the good news after good news after good news. Because you're presenting, you have to look good. Secondly, you're saying something and then someone asks a question which you're already covering 3 slides down the line. So these are all issues with PowerPoint presentation. So fundamentally, long form actually meetings become sharper. Number one, and everybody realizes that.
So what happens? So someone writes in a typical meeting at
someone
Rebel.
would write, prepare. Either it's a review, a business review, or a new project, as you said, or PR FAQ, which is a new product, is like new brand is going to be launched.
This is the Amazon PR FAQ.
Amazon
approach.
PR FAQ, etc. And there is no sending out the document and expecting people to read. So the meeting starts with the document. So people read for the first 10-15 minutes. So there's this, absolute silence for like 10-15 minutes. People are actually reading the document. And then there's sections. So one is like what's going well, what's not, depending on what type. And then there is leadership debates, issues, If you don't read those, then there are leaders in the room who have to discuss, debate based on that. If you don't read, you won't be participating in that meeting. Secondly, decisions should be taken on that document, and that might affect you as a leader. You may be expected, like leadership support required. There is a section where you're asking for support from leaders around the table or functions around the table. If you don't read it, you don't know what has been asked from you, and it gets passed, and then it'll come on you to deliver that part of the project. So people have to read it. Otherwise, there is no, somewhere in the system it'll get caught. And then secondly, it is more efficient for people who are reading, because meetings become shorter, sharper, around the most important decision points. So it saves everybody's time, and nobody wants to have long meetings and all of that. So it's in everybody's benefit. And the guy who or the girl who is writing has to put forward the thinking behind, and also it is not a make me look good kind of a presentation. So if something is not going well, it is written there, and all of that. So there's a lot of benefits, like the right things gets discussed, it's sharper. People around the table who are expected to deliver something get to know what I'm expected to deliver. If something needs to be discussed, it'll get discussed. So lots of benefits. But it took us a year, 5-6 years back when we started this, to actually go through some of these cycles. And then we used to have a feedback loop, that how was the document, was it action oriented, and a couple of things. And people started rating those, and there was some coaching, etc., that was given. So now it is like second nature, after so many years, writing a good document and reading that document, having that discussion. And
Is this something which is done at a senior leadership level, or it percolates across various levels of the organization?
All meetings are done through, there is some WBR, etc., which is around metrics, etc. But I would say 90% would be written material.
And how easy is it when new people join the organization to be able to develop this key skill of being able to communicate their thoughts well in a structured manner through a narrative form, which, by the way, is not a common skill?
Yeah, it's not a common skill. But the thing is, now that we have been doing it, at any point in time in a meeting, it's not that every day some new person is coming and doing it. So as a ratio of number of new people trying to do it is small now.
And they learn quickly.
They learn quickly because they would be there in a couple of... I remember our head of engineering who joined about 2-3 years back. In the first meeting, everybody is silent reading the document. He's like, what's going on? And then we have to explain that, okay, first we'll read it and then we'll discuss. But then people catch on and, Yeah.
What are some of your favorite mental models when it comes to decision making, especially?
Like some of the mental models we already probably talked about, which we use in business. I would say the one, again, coming back to what I was saying about being different, etc., etc. By definition, if there is a lot of support for an idea, a lot of agreement around an idea, usually that is not going to be, that will not going to lead to massive returns. And some ideas are table stakes, like good customer service. You have to do it, right? But then I've always seen that ideas that do not have support.
Can you give me an example of such an idea from the recent past that internally perhaps someone floated, but enough people weren't convinced, but it eventually went on to become successful for you?
If you say recent, then I can't tell you.
I mean, you could go back in time as
well. So, for example, the whole thing about having 2 biryani brands. People don't, maybe not a lot of people.
So, which is the other one? Behrouz Biryani is your primary brand?
The Biryani Life.
I did not know this.
So, again, someone in the room said that with Behrouz, we are addressing the premium end of the market, which is groups of luxury in that 2x2. But then there is consumer behavior which is like, in between meetings, especially in South India, people want to have a quick biryani, etc. Beirus, if we want to have a version of Beirus, then we'll drag the brand of Beirus down to that bottom left
And
corner.
no longer stay premium.
No longer stay not only premium but also group serve. Right. So that was the genesis of this. I don't remember who exactly came up with this, but we are saying, but no, we will lose focus, this, that, etc. And so there was not, but it was something that we tried out, and it worked beautifully. And we saw a completely different use case, different types of, and it has, like in a couple of years, become 100 crore plus in revenue. I mean, still early days, but the early signs are great. So, ideas that and there will be a lot of ideas where it will not work. But what I'm saying is the gating criteria should not be whether this is going to be right or wrong. The gating criteria is, if an idea sounds like, really wacky and, really out of the box, let's try and do it. And then let's see whether it's right or wrong. Typically, people do a lot of analysis on whether this is right or wrong. But fundamentally, right or wrong is not going to define whether it will become a huge success or not. Obviously, you have to be right. But first, you have to get off the bat saying that we go after this idea which is not looking like a great idea on the first go. And we've done many of these. Many of these didn't succeed, but some of them did. And some of those have become like the whole idea of launching a new brand from the same kitchen. It was an idea like that, back in 2016, 17. People, our investors said, are you crazy? This is not, McDonald's was built because of that, that one brand focus, making that thing, day in, day out. So and not many people understood this, not many people agreed with this. But for us, it worked out because later on it has been proven that this will work.
Interestingly, I mean, if I connect this back, I mean, what you seem to be saying is that there is a significant premium at Rebel Foods for experimentation and not just thinking about
Yeah.
what is right and wrong, but here's something which may not fit into the buckets of right and wrong, but let's try it out.
Yeah.
I see that as connecting back to what your original advantage is. You're saying, look, we can spin up brands at a very low marginal cost.
Yeah.
So therefore, our cost of experimentation is very low. So in effect, this thinking aids your business model as well, because it allows you to play to your strengths. Someone else cannot just spin up a brand, very rapidly or at a very
Yeah.
low cost, but you can.
Yeah. That's today. But you are right. Absolutely. Today, launching a new brand is no more a bold decision for us, so to speak. But where that brand's to be launched and, what price point, like this TBL example, it was not as much a decision of whether we can launch a new brand or not. What should be the price point? Should it be positioned differently? Those are some of the things. And around 2016, 17, even launching a new brand was a bold decision because we didn't have the operating system. It got built while we launched new brand. It was
So the act of following some of these paths led to the evolution of the business
of the
model
operating
itself,
system.
of the operating system itself.
It was not like we landed on the operating system and then, build the other things. Yeah.
Are there any, the opposite of great mental models are cognitive biases, right? Like in many ways. Are there any cognitive biases that you try to prevent your colleagues from falling into? For example, sunk cost bias, information bias, etc. Are there traps that you kind of try and steer them clear of?
See, I also have some of those biases. So it's, as a team, we are, the one of the things that you said, sunk costs. We are, over time, we've gotten better at it, but there were times when we got like stuck on that, invested into something and just trying to make it work. While enough data points are there saying that it's not going to work. So those are pitfalls that we saw ourselves and we continuously remind us. The other pitfall is analysis paralysis, which is what you are probably that's the other end of the spectrum. Where for us, if anyone says that this sounds like a good idea, the first reaction in the room would be, let's pilot.
It's very interesting because today I was reading this book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, which is called Skin in the Game.
Yeah.
And in Skin in the Game, he says that information learned by experimentation and doing is worth much more than merely theoretical information, right?
Yep.
So a lot of your success, you're saying, comes back from that thing of, hey, you got an idea, why don't you try it out instead of
Absolutely.
just talking about it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think an idea is good only when it succeeds in the marketplace, not on an Excel sheet. And
Put your money where your mouth is.
yeah, put your money over. And that's good. And that's our advantage today, is that we don't have to invest a lot before we get that information back from the market.
Hi, it's Alt Rohin again. You know, the other Rohin who interrupts the conversation a few times to tell you about something important? Are you subscribed to the First Principles Sunday newsletter? I started it last May as a way to assimilate and extend some of the discussions and topics from our podcast. But over time, the Sunday newsletter has taken a life of its own. Yes, it still has self-reflection, lifelong learning, and career growth at its core, but it also has sections on books, photography, and interesting articles. There's also a vibrant global community of readers who send in their recommendations and tips and photos. Last week, we published a timely summer playlist, which, in my humble opinion, is eclectic, vibey, and must listen. You can subscribe to the newsletter for free. Thank God some of the wonderful things in life are still free, just like this podcast too. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Okay, that's all I had to say. Back to the episode.
How do you most reliably, what's your most reliable hack to learn new things?
See, I have been a voracious reader all my life, and a little bit of that has to do with my family. My father would be would be reading, I don't know, like 5 books a week or something like that, and I picked up that habit. And sometimes I overdo, and people get worried when I'm reading a book, because I would come up with some new fancy idea and we'll say, let's try this out. But I've tempered that a little bit. But I get really, really inspired, maybe over inspired by books. So that's one. Recently, podcasts as well. Like my favorite podcast is this podcast called Acquired. It's like 3 hour, and I take long drives, so it suits me. Like I realize, our business model is very similar to, and when I say this, people will say I'm crazy, very similar to LVMH. And I realize
Very interesting. I would love to. The world's largest luxury company, whose owner at one point was the world's richest man.
Yeah.
And like the similarity, I would love to hear the analogies
It's the
and
same
connection.
operating system philosophy. Like an operating system of, and that podcast opened this in front of me. Like, an operating system has distribution layer, as an operating layer, people, manufacturing, the entire supply chain, one layer. On top of that, you position brands differently.
Got it. So LVMH has its own retail outlets. Its artisans manufacture its own products. It has its multiple various brands. And yes.
And then the evolution. Like P&G and HUL was established like that. But LVMH started with one brand.
And then acquired many along.
And then acquired or built, and along the journey built this operating system. That's why Disney also, to some extent, maybe a little far-fetched, but so, and then the learnings from there, and I would say, these are places that I get my,
Switching to a bit of personal stuff towards the end, what does personal time mean for you? What does it look like?
I think Reading.
Physical books, Kindle.
Kindle. Now I flip between books so many times that it's impossible. I'm travel. I can't carry all those books. So Kindle now. Also exercising, because in any case I'm going once a year, so I have to remain reasonably fit, if
I
not
like how
athletic.
you're
Yeah.
necessitating the need to stay fit to going once a year on a trek
Yeah.
rather than saying
Yeah.
that I need to stay fit, period.
Yeah. True. Yeah, I think you are absolutely right on that, because I'm not, you know for me, going out is the ultimate, and being there is the ultimate goal. And the
If
work
that 1 month of the year necessitates you work out for the
necessitates. Yeah.
remaining 11 months, so be
Yeah.
it.
Totally. Totally. So yeah,
What I mean, what's your workout?
running, a
Yeah.
lot of running, little bit of strength, but mostly running. Unless I'm sore or something, then I would walk, and after dinner walks as well. And that is the time I also listen to things. So yeah.
What does
Yeah.
focus mode look like for you?
uh, it's just thinking about a problem, and like really.
When and where? Like, is there a place? I mean, have you observed that, like, there are places where you're able to kind of do that thinking?
So I have an attic with a treadmill, and that is the place. I think at least for the last 5-6 years, I've done my most
Productive.
productive and rigorous thinking. You know,
While
um,
you're on the treadmill.
no, no,
Oh,
not
okay. No,
necessarily.
okay. I was just okay.
Yeah, not necessarily, but also that. Yeah, yeah.
Doing what makes you lose all sense of time?
I think walking on a mountain. Yeah,
That should be an obvious one I missed.
yeah.
You're married. You have two daughters.
2 daughters. Yeah.
How old are they?
One is just going to college. The other is 14, so class 7.
One of
Class
your
8. Yeah.
daughters is leaving for college. How does that feel like?
She's going to UCLA. So, in fact, she's there. She's just left. So it's quite crazy in many levels. Like, she's never. So I lived in a hostel all my life. So I know how to be outside. My parents knew how to live without me for a long period of time. But with this one, especially for my wife, it's tough, because this is the first time she's going, and she's going to a place where it will take 24 hours for us to reach. She has already gone there. Um, so yeah, so it's tough. But then you know we it's our decision. So, and we can't do anything about it.
What have you observed in your daughters, them growing up, them going to college, which is either similar or different from you when you were their age?
Wow, I think totally different, completely different, because I think maybe a function of our world at that point in time. So I think the world is flat now. I have a friend, like very old friend, living in London. So their family visited us over the summer, last summer. And I realized that the music that these guys are listening to, like my daughter sitting in Pune and this boy sitting in London, are the same. For us, that was not the case at all. So the world is absolutely flat. You know, their predilections, inclinations, tastes, etc., is absolutely global. Exposure is great. At our times we were thinking, engineering, or maybe one or two other professions. But my younger daughter told me the other day that 10 years down the line, people will say become a YouTuber, and or an Instagrammer and things like that. Maybe that will also change, but I think the whole world in terms of options, exposure, everything has changed completely. So I think it's a totally different world that these guys are living in.
Do you have a nickname, whether at Rebel or at
At
home?
Rebel, I'm JB, But that's not really a nickname. It's just an
just
abbreviation.
right. But did you have a nickname growing up?
Yeah,
I know a
yeah.
lot of Bengalis
Yeah,
do have
yeah,
nicknames growing up.
yeah. My nickname was Puta, which means a small one.
Oh, did you have elder siblings?
No, because I'm 5'5", look
Hmm,
five
hmm,
feet two.
hmm.
Um, I'm always on the football field. I used to be the smallest kid around, and on a trekking path, I'm the smallest one. I still am. So yeah,
If you were locked in a room for 24 hours without any internet, what would you do?
with my Kindle,
Read books?
read books. Yeah.
All right. This is a great question considering that, like, you're the CEO of Rebel Foods. What's your favorite cuisine? What is it that you'll eat 6 or 7 times out of 10 when you go out? Is there such a cuisine of food?
No, food is anti-habit. You have it too many
Not
times.
true. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people who are very habituated to food, but for you, it's an
No, a
anti-habit.
particular dish,
Ah.
6-7 times.
Hmm.
But I would say biryani is probably right up there.
Hmm.
Also, anything
Are you one of
Southeast.
those biryani fanatics who are able to say that there are 17 varieties of
I
biryani each from?
I can pick
Okay.
types of biryanis definitely. Calcutta biryani, Lucknowi, Hyderabadi,
Hyderabadi, got it.
Dindigul, Talakapatti.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm one of those. Also Southeast Asian, like Indonesian and Thai, Vietnamese, really sushi. So I have a palate for, I think, Asian food. Yeah.
Is there anything that parenting has taught you about yourself?
Yeah. I think um, I think the biggest thing it taught me, especially with my daughters, um, is that I mean, I know it might come across as a very simple thing that I can't tell them what to do. I have to make them, realize and own the decision.
Believe in something.
And on their own will. The day I've seen it number of times, even if I know that there's a particular way that something has to happen or they have to behave, the moment I instruct, there is a problem. But having a discussion, having like a free discussion, open discussion, discussing things, making them realize something. But I think that's true for this generation, in general. So yeah, that's the thing. And there are other small things like, my elder daughter never liked trekking, and I tried to take her to, mountains many times, but I could not make her do it. She's a great dancer. But my younger daughter one fine morning came to me and said she wants to go to a trek with me. And,
That must be one of the happiest days
one
of
of
your
the
life.
happiest moments that, I would have a company for as long as I'm able to do this. So yeah, so I've seen there's no point forcing anything onto these guys. Yeah.
How would you rate your own performance as a CEO and as a parent on a scale of 1 to 10?
CEO, I think till now, I would rate like 6, 7. But I think going forward, I think I need to find a better CEO. When the company becomes bigger and more process oriented and routine, I just feel that even within my team, there are people who are better than me. If
Is that
answers it.
liberating feeling?
It's,
That you feel comfortable enough to acknowledge them?
I feel very good about it because if I were the best man or the best person for the job, then I'd be very worried. Because then, I'm not going to be here forever. And I think we are onto an opportunity which is really timeless because people would be eating. And I would be very worried about if I were the best person to do this. So I can see already in my team people who are better than me in many things. So I feel
All
really
right,
good
6
about
or
it.
7 on 10 as a
Yeah,
CEO and as a parent.
I think lower. I think 4.
Was that because a lot of your time was spent
I think so.
at work?
Like, you know, my my first daughter was born when we were just started Faasos, the first avatar of Faasos, and then there were a lot of travel, etc. My second daughter was born just before Rebel Foods, like the second innings of Rebel Foods started. So I think these guys went through a large part of their life with, and this is a story that my wife keeps reminding me all the time, that in our society campus, I would come on Thursday night, and my younger daughter used to think that's how dads behave. They go out on Monday mornings, come back Thursday night. And then once I came home on Monday or Tuesday. I remember she was like ecstatic, and she was like, how come you're here today? And then her friends told her that dads come home every night. It's not that they don't come. And I really, when I look back to those things, I feel I could have been better. I could have made choices like shifting the family to Bombay, and I didn't push hard enough. I feel, I took the easy choices, which is, Pune was a great city. My wife loved it, and schools were great. Life was easier, so I took that choice. So maybe I could have made better choices as a father.
Right. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with your life?
6, I would say. 6. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll end with a few questions on fitness because, I mean, you are into that as well. What does fitness mean to you?
Fitness would mean, again, I go back to going out, that I can keep walking without getting tired. And this is not very obvious, but the thing about mountaineering, especially high altitude, like mountaineering, climbing, hiking, whatever you call it, you can never go fast because and this is very similar to businesses. If you go too fast, you're gasping for air, and then you have to come. So there's a saying in mountaineering which is like, climb high, sleep low. So that means you don't sleep at your highest point. You come down a little bit and sleep so that you acclimatize better. And same for business, by the way. I've learned it the hard way. But as long as I can do it, I can go to altitude and breathe in a rarefied atmosphere, come back in one piece. I would say I'm fit.
Has that definition of fitness changed for you over the years?
I think new elements cropped in, like cholesterol levels and things like that.
Okay, that would have been my next question, which is there a metric that you use to kind of keep track? Like, like if I were to say that fitness for you, I know it's impossible to reduce it to one or two metrics, but what are the ones that you look at most closely to determine your own fitness?
I think I look at VO2 max, which my watch tells me. The second is my resting heart rate. These are like every day, like couple of times every day. And then periodically I do normal blood tests and things like that.
Got it. Are there any favorite fitness habits that served you well over the years to stay fit?
I think at least 3 days of running a week and 50 miles, so about 100 kilometers a month. The months that I'm slightly injured, etc., and it reduces, I can sense it. The muscles are tighter, and
How long do you run? I mean, typical run for you is how many
8
kilometers?
to 10 kilometers, not like ultra long distance or anything like that. Yeah.
Is there a book that you'd recommend on fitness? Favorite book?
Not a book. There is one book which is called. It's written by Steve House. It's called Upward Athlete. So it's about endurance training, especially for mountains if you're going there. So that's a great book, but it's not for everyone, I would say. The one that I would suggest it's not a fitness book, but it's a good book. It's called Outlive.
Peter Attia's.
Peter Attia. It's a great book. Tells you more about your body, what you need to do and why exercise. That's the big thing.
Are you also a listener to his podcast?
Well, I have listened to one or two, but the book, I'm
valuable,
habitual reader, so I think
Is there a physical product that you found very useful in your fitness journey?
Garmin watch, my watch.
Because it does a much better job than, let's say, an Apple Watch? Is that it's the accuracy?
Plus long battery life. When I'm on the mountains, the Apple Watch doesn't work.
Got it. Last question. Do you have any role models when it comes to fitness?
Not really. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jaydeep. It's been a pleasure chatting. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you for having me.
First Principles is made possible with the efforts of a wonderful team. Rajiv CN, our resident sound engineer who mixes and masters our sound and audio, and Hari Krishna who produces and researches the episodes. Also, we at First Principles love feedback. So write to us. Tell us what we can improve. How else would we know? Guests we should invite, questions you think we should be asking, even things you find annoying. We'll be sure to read it, and almost always we do reply. You can write to us at fp@theken.com. And while I still have you here, if you love listening to First Principles, please rate us on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Please, please, please. On that plaintive note, I'm Rohin Dharmakumar, your host, and I'll see you next Thursday. Stay cool, stay safe.